Hi there, and thank you so much for joining us today. You are listening to Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. It is part of the Radio Ear Network family. I am your host, Sue Ashby, and this is Over the Edge. This program deals with adult issues, and parental discretion is advised, as some of the topics are not suitable for young children. This is part two of a show that was recorded last week, where I interviewed a lady called Jennifer Tracy. She is an inspiration of overcoming huge life challenges, even thinking of suicide at one time in her life. Jennifer is going to share with us the lessons that she's learned and what she is now doing to help other people who face life challenges through her own practical experience, which is always the best way. If you've been through something, you understand in a much better way than somebody who just knows about something. Jennifer, welcome to the show again. It's a joy having you with me.
Hi, thank you for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
That's a pleasure. That's a pleasure. Okay, well, we started off with last week's show where we talked about a little bit about your history, a little bit about the fact that you lost your husband and one of your daughters in a bad car accident by a drunken driver, and also how you coped with issues that had affected you really since childhood. And you shared your story. So can we take it from where we were and continue on with the lessons that you've learned that you're now sharing with other people?
Yeah, so like I was saying last week, Sue, is, a lot of times when people go through traumatic things, they kind of right away will write a book or start a nonprofit, or they pour themselves into something. And for whatever reason, I just kind of flipped it around, and I just spent a good chunk of years really putting myself through therapy and trying to be there for my daughters. Right around the 10-year mark of my husband and daughter, their death, I really started jumping into society and started motivational speaking, started some programs that I had created. And a couple years ago, I wrote a book called Inside the Mind of Suicide. It's a self-help workbook for anyone that's really struggling with depression, grief, definitely suicide, PTSD. And so what I'm really doing now is I'm launching a nonprofit called Brittany's Bridge. And my daughter that passed away, her name was Brittany. And most people don't know, but she was actually born with cerebral palsy. And so she was no stranger to adversity. She was no stranger to stigma. And one of the heartbeats of our nonprofit is we are training up mental health advocates in the county where I'm at right now, because we just really feel like no one should go through a battle with suicide, depression, PTSD, grief, addiction, that no one should go through that battle alone. And there's a song that's out there. It's the line in the song that says, "My best friend's sticking up for me even when I know I'm wrong." And I love that line to that song, because I think about that. Like, that is what an advocate is. An advocate is someone who is in your corner, even when you may be doing things that are not good for you, not good for society. But the advocate sees the good in you. They see that what you're going through is kind of overtaking you, and they're cheering you on in your corner, saying, "Hey, look, I see what you're going through. I see you. I acknowledge you." And they link arms with you, and they really try to help navigate you out of where you are into where you really want to be. And so I'm just super excited about this moment that I'm in. I feel like all of my life tragedies, I feel like all of my accomplishments, whether it be a program or a book or anything, that I get to bring all of that passion, skills, all of that into this nonprofit and really start kind of infiltrating the community and reaching those people who are struggling.
I think that's really important. Did you have an advocate?
It's so funny that you would ask me that. I am really not prepared for that answer, but I will answer it honestly. No, I had to learn how to advocate for myself, Sue. And if I was going to say, do I have an advocate? I would say the answer would be Jesus.
Okay.
And so it's not a tangible one, but it's an internal spiritual piece for myself. A lot of times when you say Jesus or you mention that you're a Christian or religious things, there's like condemnation and people telling you you're going to go to hell. And, I just really did a lot of digging for myself, Sue, and I took a look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John of this Bible, and I looked at how Jesus really treated people who were struggling. So there are so many instances of this man, Jesus, and how he treated the outcast, the broken, the ugly, the stinky, the untouchable, the adulterous woman. And he was filled with such kindness and mercy and compassion and forgiveness.
Absolutely.
And he just won my heart over with those virtues. And so internally, anytime I was struggling with things, I became my own advocate. And I bring that to the table. I bring that passion into this nonprofit. And so I just want anyone to know that if they do come to Brittany's Bridge, it's brittany'sbridge.org. It does not matter to me what religion you are, what color your skin is, what horrific thing that you've done. You are welcome.
I think that's so important, particularly in this day and age of judgmentalness and hatred that I'm sure Jesus would absolutely abhor, because he was accepting of everybody, whatever their problem was. Okay, so let's move
Yep.
on to we talked the other day about things that we have no power to control or change, and obviously there are things that you shouldn't waste time on because there's nothing you can do about them. Tell me your views on that.
Yeah. So this one is really fun for me, but the serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. Well, for whatever reason, this mind of mine got to thinking, and it was like, okay, well, what are the things I can't change? Because if I have to accept them, I better know what they are.
It always helps.
And so it actually really helps. And so I teach people to know the 5 things that you cannot change, and that is the weather, time and death, other people and their choices, the DNA that you were born with, and the past. And
Very
so
good.
anytime that you find yourself in a situation, if you can quickly ask yourself, is this something that I can change? If the answer is no, why waste any time struggling in that moment with that? So this is just a tangible thing. Like, think about, you're supposed to be somewhere, all of a sudden there's a car crash in front of you, and now you find yourself and you're going to be running late, right?
Yeah.
You have to quickly ask yourself, like, I can't control the fact that someone had a car accident in front of me. You can't change that.
No.
And so many times we become selfish and we're like, oh, now I'm going to be late and blah, 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 blah. But what I try to do in that moment is to actually get out of my own self and say, you know what? That person in front of me was just in a car crash. Like, A, I hope they're okay. B, I hope that no one died. If they did die, God, please help the family that's about to go, right? Like, I stop thinking about myself and I start thinking about those other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I really focus on what it is that I can control or change or do in that moment. And really, at the end of the day, the only thing that you can change or control is yourself.
Everything is down to us at the end of the day. And so few people really realize that, which is a shame.
It is, because once you tap into it and you realize how empowering that is, it's really hard to go back for me. Like, I think that's probably one of the greatest keys to my success, was really breaking down the serenity prayer and saying, okay, well, then if, give me the wisdom to know, God, what I do have control over. Well, that would be me, myself, and I, right?
Absolutely, because you can't take on other people's issues and problems as if they're yours, because the only person that can put those right are themselves. And this comes to a point that really touched me about your story. I've been through a situation where I had to forgive somebody for some very bad things that they did. And my church minister said, I don't think I could have done that. And I said, you're a church minister. Of course you could have done that. That's what you preach all the time. But you've forgiven the drunk driver that killed your husband and your child. And that's a much harder thing to forgive than the thing I had to forgive. But I guess it comes back to one of the 5 things you can't change, because it's something that the minute it had happened, it was in the past. I know it probably took you a long time to get there, but you can't change the past. And what had happened, however wicked and cruel it was over, and you couldn't make anybody come back.
And you're right, Sue, that was the logical part of my mind that did quickly realize, like, I can't change it. They're gone. And so when it comes to the stages of grief, I don't think I stayed very long after Brian and Brittany were killed in denial or bargaining. I think I definitely had to work through the depression and the anger a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of times people ask me about forgiving the man that killed my husband and daughter. And I always want people to understand a couple things. And that is, the man that did this showed remorse. And he spent 13 years in prison. He was sentenced to 24. I was actually a part of him being early paroled. But here is the thing that I do want our listeners to understand. First of all, I am incredibly thankful to all of our first responders and our law enforcement for the job that they do and what the punitive piece that they do. Because sometimes people misunderstand and think that I'm saying, because I forgave this man, that I don't think that we should have the punitive piece. And I think I get misunderstood. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is this. If Mr. Goonan was not remorseful and was, didn't care about what he did or whatever, I would not have advocated for him in prison and, been a part of him being early paroled. And so, again, that's really important, because I've had some people say, well, the person that did this isn't sorry for what they did, or they don't see that what they're doing is hurtful to other people. And that's an entirely different subject.
Yes.
That's something else that, does that make sense? Like, if something happened and that person is still out hurting other people, you can still forgive them, which means that you're not holding the anger towards them, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go out and try to make that right.